We have two huge news stories announced by Elon Musk. One of them is probably the most important piece of news for Tesla so far this year. And the other one is here. This might be the biggest fraud in the history of humanity. And this could put an even bigger target on Elon's back. According to the Social Security database, these are the numbers of people in each age bucket with a death field set to false. So based on this chart that Elon Musk just posted, there are 120,000 people in the US ages between 160 and 169 collecting Social Security, and 1 million people between ages 150 and 159, 3.5 million people ages between 140 and 149. And then it gets even more interesting. If you add all of these numbers up, you get almost 400 million people, but there are only supposed to be 335 million people in the US. To which Elon replies with, yes, there are far more eligible Social Security numbers than there are citizens in the USA. This might be the biggest fraud in history. Elon Musk continues. The logic flow diagram for the Social Security system looks insane. No one person actually knows how it works. The payment files that move between Social Security and Treasury have significant inconsistencies that are not reconciled. It's wild. And how many older people does the US have? Well, the count of people ages 100 and older was more than 80,000 according to the US Census Bureau data. So definitely not millions. I am looking forward to explanations of what's actually happening. This seems like it's going to be a huge deal. I would hope it's just some sort of misunderstanding, but if this is fraud, this is the biggest fraud in the US right now. And if that's true, someone is getting that money, and whoever is getting that money is going to be extremely angry with Elon Musk. And in this case, it doesn't even matter what your political beliefs are. People getting money that are not there anymore, obviously this should never happen. I think we can all agree on that much. And now, this is, I personally believe, the biggest news for Tesla so far this year. This is extremely relevant to Tesla, even though it's not directly about Tesla. And if you have seen this already, pay attention because Elon hours ago just gave another update. Elon made an announcement here. Grok 3 released with live demo on Monday night at 8 p.m. Pacific time. Smartest AI on Earth. He then posted, we'll be honing the product with the team all weekend, so offline until then. But he wasn't offline because he had to expose the Social Security fraud. And then hours ago, he posted this update. It's looking good. This is not Elon saying, oh, XAI will have the smartest AI in 6 months or 12 months from now or sometime this year or next year. No, it's going to happen today. And it wasn't just one post because he followed up with it's looking good. He's not backtracking, he's doubling down. And that's what I mean by there's an update to the story. He's doubling down. Now, if Elon Musk is able to create the smartest AI in the whole world, what do you think that means for Tesla's full self-driving and for Tesla's Tesla bot? Do you think this makes it less likely that Tesla is going to just absolutely obliterate every company out there than it comes to solving full self-driving and having a system that's actually safer than everything else that can scale without LiDAR and without HD maps, without some serious geofencing? Or do you think this is completely irrelevant and it's basically a nothing burger? Because, you know, being able to build the smartest AI in the whole world, why would that matter at all? It's not like Elon Musk is the CEO of Tesla, right? So obviously it wouldn't matter. No, but seriously, I really personally think this is the biggest news so far this year for Tesla. And what's even more mind-blowing about all of this is XAI just about 2 years ago didn't even exist, and now it's going to be the best AI on the planet. Other companies have been working on AI for years, and yet Elon Musk is just going to obliterate them. So XAI is supposed to be just a startup that should be worth basically nothing, except it's actually going to raise $10 more billion at a valuation of $75 billion. Now, this money has not been raised yet, but given Elon's track record, it's likely that he will be able to pull it off. Also, according to Reuters sources, recently, Elon raised $6 billion from investors at a valuation of $40 billion for XAI. So if these sources are correct, then that means that Elon Musk just basically double the value of XAI. This is insane. So in about 2 months' time, we are supposedly going from a 40 billion valuation to now 75. And for those who have been watching this channel, you remember me talking about how I want to invest in XAI, but because it's a private company, it's so incredibly difficult to do so. It is hard to look at this and not just be totally flabbergasted. In 2024, January, the company was basically valued at post-money valuation, meaning after raising this much money, it was less than $1 billion. This is all according to the pitch book from the Wall Street Journal. And then a few months later, the company was valued at $24 billion, only to be valued at about $40 billion later last year in December. But now the company is worth $75 billion. Wow. The stakes are high with this new release of Grok 3. If it indeed is the smartest AI in the whole world, this, I believe, will be massively positive for Tesla as well. I was criticized earlier for being very bullish on XAI, but I think we can say now I was right to be bullish about it. Just like how I've been screaming this whole time that Tesla stock is indeed a buying opportunity this whole time, and many lost hope and became bears, especially around December, January of 2022, 2023. We lost Tesla Economist, we lost Chicken Genius, and we lost Ross Gerber, and we didn't really lose Rob Maurer from Tesla Daily. He's still bullish about Tesla, but he's not posting anymore, except for once a quarter, he does go over the Tesla earnings. But personally, I am here to stay for a long time. I became a Tesla stock investor in early 2019, and I watched my Tesla stock go down about 50% after I made that investment. And I thought, whoa, this is hard. So when we had that 70% drop, I was fully prepared for it, and I was just buying more this whole time. And I personally believe that Tesla stock is going to $1,000 per share, and then after that, well above it. So subscribe if you haven't yet to follow this journey. And do you remember Sam Altman saying this about Elon Musk? I wish he would just compete by building a better product. Yeah, instead of doing the right thing and stopping you from converting a nonprofit into a for-profit, right? Probably his whole life is from a position of insecurity. I feel for the guy. I don't think he's like a happy person. Well, it's difficult to be happy when you're trying to do the impossible over and over again and you get criticized for it nonstop. But I have a question for Sam Altman. What if Elon Musk also makes a better AI than you? A much better AI. The thing about Elon Musk is he can multitask. He can stop you from converting OpenAI into a for-profit company, and he can also make a better AI than you, while also having Tesla solve full self-driving as a side quest, while he's taking on cutting waste from the US government. And now I want to show you something that I think is actually really bullish. It will take me about a minute to explain, so hang tight. First of all, there are some bigger institutions buying Tesla stock. Now, some of these are index funds, like for example, Vanguard. That's not an individual investor buying, but there are a few institutions here that do actively manage money and they are buying Tesla stock. And I also want to quickly touch upon Bridgewater and Ray Dalio buying Tesla stock. Some people are saying that Bridgewater buying Tesla stock is no news at all because Ray Dalio is no longer at Bridgewater, but how do you then explain Ray Dalio's picture being right here and him clearly still being on the board of directors? He did step down as a co-chief investment officer back in 2022, but at that time, there were 3 co-chief investment officers. He's certainly not as active as before, but he still remains involved for sure. And now on to the big point. Back in 2023, in Q2, institutional investors own 42.96% of Tesla stock. And every roughly few quarters, the trend has been going up. It got to 44% and then 46%, and now it's sitting at 47%. And why is this important? Well, look back at, for example, 2019, you will see that institutional investors owned a bigger portion of Tesla's stock. So if the same thing was to happen again, this would mean that it's bullish for Tesla to be owned by institutional investors. All this data, by the way, is based on the official NASDAQ data. In the meantime, Wall Street seems to be more excited about Tesla's more affordable models than it is about Tesla's FSD, even though Elon Musk just said that he is going to unveil the smartest AI in the whole world. Well, we'll see about that. But here, Canaccord Genuity analyst George says the stock is really hinging upon the new vehicle they're introducing. First, the new Model Y, which looks like a remarkably nice vehicle, and the promise of additional vehicles throughout the rest of the year. When you have new products coming out and the company has done a really good job at introducing new products that people like, those tend to really move the P&L and reinvigorate growth. It's a bit unfortunate that many from Wall Street will miss the big obvious thing, FSD from Tesla being safer than human driving. It's just a matter of time at this point. It's not just FSD. Elon also believes there will be so many robots, and if that's true, of course, Tesla Bot will be a very important piece in the future of robotics. Also, what's really quite different this time about FSD comments is not just Elon saying it's going to be solved soon. We are also seeing people from the Tesla team saying basically the same thing. For example, here's Lars from Tesla. He's one of the most important people at Tesla right now. He says, I don't think people really realize how close fully autonomous driving is. Progress with FSD continues, and Dr. Jack here says Tesla's FSD V13 is scary. It has become so good that I trust it way too much now. Even Omar says, I got 2 strikes the other day. Stay vigilant and don't get complacent, everyone. Dr. Jack finds himself having faith it will handle essentially every situation. I'm trying to always stay vigilant, he says, and be a good supervisor, but man, it's hard. Hence why he got his first warning that he was not paying attention to the road often enough and FSD disengaged. I have gotten warnings before from FSD, but never to a point where it actually disengaged. And we are actually at the most dangerous point of FSD development here, I believe personally, because we are at a point where it's good enough to lure you into a false sense of security, but not good enough to be without supervision. Ideally, we quickly pass the stage, and ideally it becomes safer than human driving quickly. And people's confidence goes even higher when they see something like this. Check this out.
Car brakes and slightly veers to the left. And at first I didn't know why, but then I realized that there is actually a man dressed in all black on a bicycle. And I feel like if I was the one actually driving, I probably would have hit him. But FSD handled the situation.
This is a pretty good example of why I personally feel safer when I engage FSD and turn it on. And look, I'm starting to see things like this more and more often. Tesla FSD V13 didn't need me at all today from Houston, Texas to Kansas. This was a 653-mile drive, and it had 0 interventions except for the final few feet of parking at a couple of Tesla superchargers, but we know that that can be quickly solved. And as you can see here, 0% on autopilot, 100% on full self-driving, 100%. And here's someone else doing something similar, 100% on full self-driving from Washington, D.C. to New York City. And then he clarified, any accelerator taps? He answers 0 interventions of any kind. So I assume 0 accelerator taps too. I can't wait for Cybercabs to actually start rolling on the streets, and they will feel really spacious. So the smallest Tesla may actually end up feeling the most spacious. I've seen multiple posts on X getting some traction with this news. Tesla's ahead of the schedule for releasing cheaper models in early Q2, and these posts got hundreds of thousands of views. Here's another one with 200,000 views almost, and I tried to find this exact article, but all I found was this, and this is from December 7th. The article calls this new smaller vehicle a Model Q with a post-subsidy price below $30,000, with expected overseas pricing for the vehicle starting around $25,000. Internally, this vehicle is known as Redwood and should be about 15% smaller and about 30% lighter than a Model 3. And this is some good news. We know, of course, that the FSD community tracker is not perfect and there are some flaws with it, but here, based on its data, the new version, 13.2.7, is supposedly significantly better compared to the previous version. It's almost twice as good, at least based on these early submissions. And the thing is, now people are actually using FSD in some quite challenging situations. Before, for example, I think when it first came out around here, people were really careful how they were using it. And I don't think they were trying to use it in the most difficult situations, but now people are really stress testing it. At this point, you can throw pretty much anything at FSD, and usually it handles it okay, even when it's really difficult. Not always, of course, there are definitely serious flaws, and it's definitely not safer than human driving, so pay attention. But what I'm talking about here is progress. Also, I can definitely say with 100% confidence that 12.5.1 is definitely nowhere near as good as 12.5.6.3, which is the version I have in one of my vehicles, and I also just tried 13.2.7, and this one, of course, is definitely better, the V13 version. So I'm definitely quite skeptical about this data. There's something just off, because 12.3.6 definitely is not better than the latest V12 version. Definitely not. So keep that as a caveat in mind, but if there's no error in the data this time, then FSD is certainly getting better. And from all of these drives that I showed you just today alone, we are clearly seeing a good trend. Now, Gary Black says that there remains a huge disconnect among some Tesla bulls, that Tesla will show significant value creation after the Austin autonomous ride-hailing test market in June 2025. But Gary argues that any potential value creation is limited or already discounted in the stock. And Gary now admits that FSD efficacy is about 500 miles per critical disengagement, which is equal to about 2 weeks of driving with no disengagement, which is a big deal already. But of course, it is still nowhere near ready for unsupervised ride-hailing. And looking at other companies that have unsupervised robotaxis deployed, the system needs to be at least 15,000 miles per critical intervention, which is about 1 disengagement per year for the system to be deployed, which actually seems like a low number because there definitely isn't a crash every 15,000 miles driven when human drivers drive. But I think the reason why the 15,000 number is presented here is because Waymo or other companies are able to deploy robotaxis based on this intervention rate, and when there's an intervention, the vehicle doesn't necessarily crash, it just maybe just blocks traffic and just stops, and that counts as an intervention, but not necessarily as an accident. Gary continues, even Elon is cautioning that Tesla will just put a toe in the water, make sure everything is okay, then put a few more toes in the water, then put a foot in the water with safety of the general public, which sounds like the Austin test market may have a supervised driver in the car just to make sure nothing goes wrong. Although Elon said that it should be unsupervised. While I certainly see the point that Gary Black is making here in terms of the stock maybe not reacting too much if Tesla just announces a small test area where you can get a Tesla robotaxi. So I personally am not expecting all too much from that. However, I do expect the stock to start to seriously react the moment Tesla starts to expand into multiple markets and the moment it's not really limited to just a small area. So I think by the time Tesla launches in about, let's say, 15 or 20 cities, I think we will see some pretty good impact on Tesla stock. And most importantly, I think it's not even so much about launching in multiple different cities, it's about interventions. So right now, my guess is at best, we go 500 miles without interventions on average or without a disengagement. If independent third parties could test Tesla vehicles, Tesla's FSD, and say that now we are at 20,000 miles per disengagement, I think that would skyrocket the stock quickly. But if you somehow launch in 15 different cities and if you just drive a Tesla vehicle in a random place and every 1,000 miles you still need to disengage, I don't think that would do all that too much to the stock. I mean, it might because there might be a lot of hype, but personally, I wouldn't expect much yet. But based on what Elon Musk is implying, I would expect Tesla to have FSD software safer than human driving before the year ends, where you take it basically anywhere in the US and it can drive generally safer than human driving. That's not my personal prediction, but that's just, I think, what Elon Musk implies. Wow, well, this is good. If you remember back in 2023, Tesla vehicles had basically the worst value retention because Tesla cut prices so much. But now, the China Automotive Dealers Association announced that the Tesla Model S and X, these are the best in terms of value retention for EVs. And they specifically use the word new energy vehicles, which also includes hybrids, and the Model X is the only model with a value retention rate of over 80%. And this is the article translated from Chinese to English, and I believe the time frame they are using is 1 full year. The Model 3 is ranked as number 6, and the Model Y is number 13. And that's probably largely because of the refresh. So we ran an interesting poll. What do you think Tesla's more affordable model will be? A stripped down Model 3 or Y? An all new smaller vehicle? Or a Cybercab with a steering wheel? I think generally the market would be disappointed if it was just a stripped down Model 3 or Y. And likely it's going to look like a new smaller vehicle. And based on previous rumors and leaks, it's supposed to be about 30% lighter and 15% smaller. So I would be surprised if it actually was just a stripped down Model 3 or Y. But the real question is it going to basically be a Cybercab with the steering wheel, or is it going to be an entirely different vehicle? Even big Tesla stock bulls don't have a firm opinion on this. Tesla braces for a delay to basically deploy FSD in China as the Trump trade tensions mount. The Chinese authorities said to be weighing approval as a bargaining chip in trade negotiations with the US. If you remember, Elon said this on the last earnings call: they will not currently allow us to transfer training videos out of China. China will not allow it. And then the US government will not let us do training in China. So it's a bit of a quandary, says Elon. Now, there were some protests against Tesla and Elon Musk in front of Tesla showrooms. Here's one in New York City. They had some chants too. And there's a death threat here, as you can see as well. That's not good. That was probably the biggest protest there was. So that was in New York City. Other protests seem to be much smaller. And this is from The Guardian. Tesla anti-Elon protests flop. Barely anyone showed up. I guess the only exception was basically the New York City location. But this was supposed to be nationwide, not just in New York City. So despite all the online outrage, most locations saw only a handful of protesters, proving once again that online tantrums don't translate into real-world impact in most locations. Now, this protester in particular, he wants to adjust the dosage for Elon's ketamine. And here's Tesla's location in Austin. Here's another location. And Ross Gerber took this picture. I believe this was in Los Angeles. Ross Gerber is now basically a Tesla bear, and he says he's going to sell his Cybertruck. Here's another one. This is in Minneapolis. I think some people, after seeing these protests, are going to sell some Tesla shares, and there will be some people that will not want to buy a Tesla. But in the long term, I don't think that actually matters, because Tesla will solve full self-driving. And I personally believe that Tesla stock is going to $1,000 per share, and then after that, well above. My name is Matt Pochis, and make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you in the next video. And just a quick update on the event that I will be doing on May 3rd and 4th in Houston, Texas. I will be posting a sign-up link for that this Wednesday, just sorting out a few final things before I post the link to sign up.